Every competitive game has a character that stays on top. Bayonetta dominated Smaforge for years. Minecraft Steve has made people question if Ultimate is even a fun competitive game. But for every best character, there has to be a worst character. Today, we're talking about the unintentional error in Brawl's game code, the awful engine changes from Melee, and even some borderline sabotage from the developers, all that make Brawl Ganondorf the worst character in all of Smash history. Ganondorf as a character has always filled a specific archetype in Smash since his introduction in Melee. He's big, he's slow, but as a trade-off, he's vastly powerful and kills early. Now, Melee's engine, obviously complete with wave dashing, L canceling, and many other mechanics that incentivize skill expression through speed, feel counterintuitive to the Smash Bros. Developers' concept for Ganon as a character. But without those advanced techniques, he's still big, he's still slow, and he's still powerful. With Brawl's brand new engine, they were either looking to expand upon Ganondorf's beloved playstyle, or debatably, completely abolish it. Now, I've talked a bit about the transition from Melee's engine to Brawl's engine, but the biggest takeaway is always the same. It's a lot slower. Regardless of Sakurai's intentions with this change, that's the cold hard reality. But to really understand why the King of Evil's new clothes just don't fit, we need to first understand the changes in movement mechanics from Melee to Brawl. Both fall speed and gravity in general were changed to be much lighter in Brawl compared to Melee. Each returning character falls slower, making jumping and aerials both much more committal in Brawl, since once you jump, you'll be stuck in the air for longer. To compensate, many characters have longer, slower, or simply much more active hitboxes in the air. You can also now grab the ledge facing away from it, something you weren't really able to do in Melee. Well, at least most of the time.
Show me a move.
It is, however, important to note that edge-hogging still existed in Brawl. If you were holding the ledge, another character couldn't grab it. Alongside fall speed and gravity, there was also a complete overhaul in the way characters could move in the air. In Melee, if you jump while dashing forward, a lot of characters get Cowabunga Cannonball launched through the air, a mechanic that makes characters like Captain Falcon extremely entertaining to watch. We've all seen a crazy deep knee of justice, or a slingshot falcon punch off stage.
Oh, no way.
Just an all-around competitor-friendly mechanic that allows for players to make dynamic and explosive plays. In Brawl, this was obviously nerfed fairly heavily. Characters can still jump out of a dash, but each character has a much more tightly defined airspeed as a result of the game engine overhaul. They clearly wanted the game to be more family-friendly and easier for kids to control compared to Melee, which is bizarre in retrospect given the game's T for teen rating, but that's a conversation for another time. Fact of the matter is, aerial movement was placed on a hit list for Brawl, and fast veteran characters from Melee more or less all suffer from this change universally. Air dodges were also changed in Brawl. Instead of a directional air dodge, we have a brief period of full intangibility that you can use as many times as you like in the air, given you have the time to perform them. This change feels like another attempt to balance the lower gravity and fall speed, giving characters more options to land, but is actually a bit counterintuitive in retrospect, as it gives characters like Meta Knight, who live in and dominate the air, an even stronger defensive or camp-heavy playstyle. Melee had a mechanic called move scaling, where attacks would do less percent the more you used the same attack, but Brawl took this even further. Attacks now also do progressively less knockback the more you use them as well. This sounds like a minor change, but scaling is a menace in Brawl and way overtuned. Attacks that would certainly KO at say 150% could take up to double the percent to kill when they were fully scaled. Shield stun was drastically decreased, so you can act out of shield much quicker after getting hit, not to mention if your shield doesn't get hit, you can drop it in only 7 frames. To top it all off, crouch canceling was removed from the game, which is a melee technique that significantly reduces or full-on cancels knockback if you crouch before getting hit. Obviously, there's a lot more random small stuff like tripping, pivot grab, you can Mario Bros footstool your mortal enemies. But if you're sharp and on top of your game, you might have noticed a pattern by now. And it's that many of these shiny new mechanics heavily incentivize defensive play. And Ganondorf not only has one of the worst defensive movesets in all of Smash history, he also has nearly zero tools for an offensive game plan either. The removal of L cancel and wave dashing stripped him of essentially everything that made him viable in the first place. But we're just starting to scratch the surface. In fact, now that we've determined that Ganondorf was the natural enemy of Brawl's new game engine, we can finally discuss why Ganondorf was, for some reason, also the natural enemy of Brawl's Q&A testers.
Hello.
If you're enjoying the video, like, subscribe, thank you so much. And I have a Patreon and a Ko-fi now, so if you want to do that as well, thank you so much for supporting me. Bye. That's the back of the video. The lack of wave dashing means that Ganondorf has to rely on his awful movement speed, which is second worst in the entire game, meaning most characters can either projectile camp him or simply circle camp him and wait for him to overextend or make a mistake in neutral. Not only is he slow at approaching, he's slow at running away. He has a bottom 3 initial dash in the game, but his initial dash is actually faster than his top running speed, so he's slow but actually gets a little slower by the time he settles in. Because of this, he's forced to interact with his opponent if they approach, which is almost always a bad thing because his shield is, for some reason, unusually small compared to his large body, causing a shield poke to pose significantly more of a problem than it ever should in a game like Brawl. His rolls don't even cover very much distance, so that's not always a good option to escape either. But if you do manage to block an incoming attack, Ganon's most reliable out-of-shield option is Jab, which has good range but is fairly punishable, especially as your go-to out-of-shield option. His fastest aerial out-of-shield, Up Air, has an awkward hitbox and is unable to punish most attacks on shield, and his neutral air, only being 1 frame slower, is slightly better at this, but is still unsafe in most shield interactions. If you find yourself in the reverse position, shielding side by side with your opponent, Ganon's most reliable attack out of shield may be Jab, but his grab is by far the fastest. But that being said, you'll quickly find out that Brawl Ganondorf's grab is so bad, it has a negative disjoint, meaning the character model reaches out beyond the hitbox, making it very difficult to punish one of the most common defensive options in the entire game. His dash grab is not much better, and his average end lag, which is still pretty slow, but his pivot grab, for some reason, has way longer of a hitbox, which would be useful, but like I said, second slowest ground speed in the game. You're not lapping anyone with those legs, old man. Ganon's up smash is negative 13 on shield, but pushes them back a little, and a perfectly auto-cancelled back air is negative 8 on shield. That's assuming you can even hit the opponent, as the hitbox of a perfectly auto-cancelled back air is high up in the air, and will whiff entirely on smaller characters. Negative 8 means that the opponent has 8 frames from when the attack lands to try and punish your attack. So assuming you can hit the perfect back air, you should theoretically be fine. But the entire rest of his moveset is over negative 20 on shield, and many others are much higher. The only saving grace is that some moves have the pushback I briefly mentioned, which will make your opponent slide further away, but power shielding this will mitigate the pushback entirely. Speaking of his aerials though, I have to mention his poor forward air. In Melee, it was a great neutral tool with absurd knockback, getting early kills and racking up percents like no one's business. But in Brawl, it has a coding error. Instead of giving it a normal auto-cancel like the rest of his moves, the Brawl developers accidentally gave it a 55 frames of end lag. Yes, almost a full second of end lag from what is supposed to be one of his primary kill moves. You can't make this up. Ganon's forward air is supposed to be a good move. Nerfed from Melee, but a good move. There's a video by Super SKUNCH, aka Big Bang Bot, talking about Ganon's forward air in much more depth, and I cannot recommend that enough, because the error is bizarre. But in terms of frame data, that's just the beginning. In general, his frame data is the second slowest in the entire game next to King Dedede, who once again has this balanced by his disjoints, back air, kill power, and of course, his absolutely menacing chain grabs. Ganondorf just doesn't have tools anything like this. His aerials are awkward with odd hitboxes. His moves in general have poor reach, and it all comes together with massive sour spots. He has kill power, but you just can't land a hit. All of this plus the fact that he's the tallest character in the game with subsequently the tallest vertical hurt box. He also has a 7-frame jump squat, or the amount of frames from pressing jump to the character actually leaving the ground, which is absurdly slow compared to most characters in the entire series, especially in Ultimate, explained further in this video by Fire the Pyro, which I also wholeheartedly recommend, and make the world's briefest cameo in. So you're sitting on stage as Ganondorf, your neutral is awful, your movement speed is garbage, you're a sitting duck in the air, and you can't hit back if they pressure your shield. Surely his recovery is incredible to give you as many opportunities to run it back in neutral as possible, right? Yeah, no. Your stock is essentially forfeit the moment you leave the stage. His double jump is the 3rd lowest in the entire game, so you're not recovering vertically. His airspeed is 30th in the game, so you're not recovering horizontally. His down special, Wizard's Foot, no longer gives him his aerial jump back like it did in Melee, and his up special, Dark Dive, is so painfully predictable and vertically shallow that it can easily just be edgehogged if he does manage to make it back to the stage in the first place. So it feels safe to say that the developers hated Ganondorf. But on the bright side, Brawl itself also hated Ganondorf. There's something called the recovery carryover lag, or RCO lag, which is an obviously unintentional glitch where every single time Ganondorf uses his up B to grab either the ledge or an opponent, the next time he lands with an aerial or just normally, he'll have significantly more landing lag. Ganondorf's ledge jump is horrible, so if you really want to jump onto stage to get rid of the RCO lag quickly, you have to fully commit to an option, because the moment you land, regardless of how you get there, you're going to suffer insane landing lag and definitely get punished if you choose wrong. Recovery carryover lag is also something that Ganon stores after grabbing ledge, so if the next time you're in the air, for whatever reason, you'll still land with the severe landing lag. As specifically pointed out from Super Squonk, the guy I mentioned earlier, if Ganon has RCO lag stored up on stage, DDD can down throw into forward smash as a confirm. So not only is his recovery terrible, but having to recover even once with either Dark Dive or Flame Choke gives him an actual debuff that he has to play around. But somehow, through pure courage and willpower, Brawl Ganondorf transcends the game's code yet again to make things even worse. At high enough percents, getting hit by an attack puts you in tumble, meaning you'll be stuck in hit stun for a bit and then hit the ground hard, but can tech the landing. Momentum canceling makes use of this. You can use an aerial to slow your launch speed and cancel your hit stun, aka hit stun cancel. They nerfed Ganondorf's up special, Dark Dive's knockback heavily from melee, but for some reason Dark Dive has a bugged hit stun cancel window, meaning when you get to tumble percents and Ganon uses Dark Dive on you, you can immediately act out of it. This is the only grab or command grab in the game that has this bug, rendering it so useless that landing the attack can actually give your opponent a free opening. They get rewarded for your hard work. You're playing Ganondorf. That move is not easy to land. And to top it all off, pretty much every character with a normal chain grab in Brawl can do it on Ganon, since he's heavy and is technically also a fast faller. Normally characters like this would have a projectile, some sort of anti-camping measure like a good burst option, an absorber, or reflector. But Ganon has, well, none of these. He's basically not even a real character, framed as the all-powerful Great King of Evil, but implemented with the stats of a joke character. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, however. To be transparent, it's not very bright. It's actually not bright at all. It's dim and maybe heavily diffused. But what is this light, you ask? Brawl Ganondorf is hype as fuck. Brawl Ganondorf has a flashy move with such an astronomical skill ceiling that it is sick to watch. The move is his side special, Flame Choke. Brawl is special because when you land a grounded Flame Choke, you can call out your opponent with the hard read, predicting a normal get up attack, roll away, or roll behind, all with another Flame Choke. Oh, and in case you didn't know, in Brawl, this attack is not techable, meaning if you were walking around with the biggest Doctor Strange 14 million outcomes, but you're gonna do this tech chase ability, you can essentially delete your opponent's stock through a series of cold, hard reads. Depending on the character, you can even get certain follow-ups: forward tilt, dash attack, down tilt, or on Olimar specifically, down smash. Which, let's be real, if you, somehow, as Ganon, manage to stay on the stage against Olimar and even get close enough to land a clean Flame Choke, you should be allowed to do whatever you want to the 6 Pikmin wielding, small hurtbox, strongest back throw in the game, up smash slam, 50% off of one tiny little grab, annoying sack of shit. You earned that. And that's it. That's all he has. Just for the record, he does have other stuff, like his pogo stick down air, Flight of Ganon, etc. I was being dramatic, but I had the best Ganondorf in the world, DLA, in my region.
I started with Ganon back in the Brawl days. I was the top-ranked Ganon in the world.
And let's just say I got to witness him do things to top tiers that were so against the laws of nature, and also probably the Geneva Convention, that I am happy capture cards weren't a thing yet. And that's a good thing to keep in mind. Characters in Smash are nuanced. I can talk about how terrible Ganondorf is all day, show my work, and then hit submit, but I personally watched DLA win so many unwinnable matchups. The bottom line is that Ganondorf is almost more telling of Brawl's balance issues than Meta Knight is. The lack of due diligence while creating and crafting this character is seen through the cracks, and despite terrible characters still existing in future Smash games, none of them can quite compare to the monstrosity of Brawl Ganondorf. Thanks for watching, and for all the support and generosity you've shown me on Patreon and Ko-fi. Like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the content, and as always, there's a lot, like actually a lot, coming up soon. See you next time.